Howdy, Dr. Will Wong here, and welcome to tonight's edition of the Essentials of Life and Wellness. I have been away from the mic for an awfully long time, and I apologize for that. There have been an awful lot of questions that have piled up, and let's get to those before I cover any points in the news. And the first question from someone who is really super anal retentive, manic compulsive, and one of those super purist folks who absolutely drive me up the frickin' wall. After a number of book-length questions that I patiently answered, was very nice, very whatever, this last one really got me. Thank you, doctor, for reaffirming your point. Question number 1. What do you think about eating a dish or a bowl of rice? Is it healthy? You came from the Chinese background and know more about it. Whether it's good to eat a few servings a week or not. Question number 2. When we cook, we use tomato paste, not tomato juice, which is full of high fructose corn syrup. Canned tomato paste we use have no fructose corn syrup in it. What do you think about it? What? You're asking me freaking questions about tomato paste? Are you nuts? And my answer is, howdy. Rice is difficult to digest, and one Swiss study done decades ago showed it took more calories to digest than it gave in energy. Don't have an opinion one way or the other about tomato paste. Yep, corn syrup should be avoided, but I am not hidebound and crazy super purist about food. Those folks never enjoy a meal, usually eat really tasteless shit, and are so neurotically fanatic about their food that they've turned the pleasure of eating into a religion of lack. Might as well be dang Lent all year long. All of the folks I know who are so overly concerned about their food and its purity are miserable to live with. Neurotic, that's the second time I've said that, and make all around them miserable with their super pure fanaticism. But most of all, among the docs and people that I've seen these last 30 years as a naturopath, the super purist folks don't live any longer than the folks who aren't super purists. Period. Matter of fact, somewhere in their 50s, they really begin to waste away. They lose muscle mass, they lose bone density, and very likely they lose internal organ size. By then, they've also estranged most of their kids and their kin as well. Be well and God bless, Dr. Wong. Hopefully this guy gets it from my nudge. And here's another question from another super purist. After reading many articles, I found that ascorbic acid is not vitamin C. That's just marketing hype. The vitamin C we have on the market is crap. According to Dr. Albert Szent-Györgyi, the founder of ascorbic acid, he said that after extracting ascorbic acid from pepper, it will lose most of its effectiveness. Most vitamin C on the market is a mixture of GMO corn and hydrochloric acid. How can we get a natural vitamin C supplement? I have a question about milk. Which one is best, pasteurized or non-pasteurized? I know that people consume milk in the raw before pasteurization was invented. As far as I know, applying heat to milk will kill the good enzymes and the bad bacteria, the E. coli. But in fact, it is one of our normal gut flora. I'm confused now as to the best source for my kids and my family. Raw, pasteurized, or ultra-pasteurized? And my answer is, howdy. Sorry, but what you're believing is the industry hype. Ascorbic acid, vitamin C, is fermented from grains like beer. It is very inexpensive. It is very pure. So pure, in fact, it is the only form of vitamin C that can be used in IV therapy because to use any other form would cause fever and death. In being inexpensive, the nutritional industry has to badmouth it so it can sell you the very expensive alternatives they've created. They'll also tell you that vitamin C needs help to be absorbed, like coating it with fat. That's physiologic nonsense. Nothing absorbs faster and more completely than ascorbic acid, and nothing causes the absorption of anything taken with it faster than ascorbic acid. That fact is even taught in allopathic med school. It's so universal. This reminds me of the hype about ubiquinol and CoQ10. There is nothing CoQ10 does that vitamin E does not do. But the industry can charge you super expensive prices for CoQ10, while vitamin E is no longer pressed from grain, but made again via fermentation and is very inexpensive. Too cheap, actually, for the nutritional industry companies to make any money from. That's also why they have to convince you that the vitamin E won't work without its sister vitamin E's, meaning the tocotrienols, and that is bullshit. While the tocotrienols are nice to have around, they are not essential for vitamin E to function. These industry lies kill people. Folks who could afford vitamin E and have improved heart health instead try to use a CoQ10 but can't take enough of the crap to make a physiological difference due to its extreme costs, so they get worse in their heart disease and they die. The nutritional industry is no better than the drug industry in its lies for profit. And by the way, my favorite vitamin E supplement is Emergen-C in the raspberry flavor. Now, mankind has forgotten that 100 years ago, the number one killer in the world was infection. And the number one source of infection was milk. Brucellosis, listeria, and even TB were had from milk. Since pasteurization, mankind has been able to die of other things. It's been found that even in certified raw milk, those bad bacteria can still be had. I've no problem with pasteurized milk, although we have our own flock of goats, so we drink goat's milk, which I also pasteurize. Be well and God bless, Dr. Wong. Now, one point that I did not touch on. He said that E. coli was part of our natural gut flora. Well, yes, it is, but not the kind that kills people. There are various different types of E. coli, some benign and some not. And just because nobody bothers to make the differentiation does not mean that the E. coli that you're going after when you pasteurize milk is the good stuff, because it isn't. That's a kind that'll kill you. And on to the next question. Dear Dr. Wong, from my husband, before laying out all the details, there's one important thing. He's 35 years old, and I believe he has shrunken testicles. You mentioned in one of your videos that testicle shrinkage is non-reversible. He works out regularly, not intense though. Eats no black beans, has mild to moderate veggie eater, but he is shedding hair in his chest and belly areas more than our golden retriever does. He's sometimes depressed, has hypothyroidism, his ejaculation is quite thick, oozes out with no force, and does not squirt out like before, and many other symptoms. Question is there a way to reverse these issues with having shrunken small testicles by taking your supplements, or do I have to get a new guy? Only kidding. So is it possible to reverse this condition by taking your supplements? How long does he need to take them? 6 months, 1 year, forever? I'm really worried about him, and that's why I'm doing all the research on high estrogen level consequences. And my answer is, howdy. On the shrunken testicles, it is possible using human chorionic gonadotropin, and that's what the big-time bodybuilders, pro wrestlers, and football linemen do at the end of their careers. The docs who specialize in restoration of testicular size and function are very few and far between, mostly known only to the sports world. I personally don't know of any. As for the amount and viscosity of seminal fluid, I'll make you buy my men's book, Maximum Male Performance, to get that answer. But if the prostate itself is not squeezing out and shooting like it used to, I don't have an answer for that. Be well and God bless, Dr. Wong. And the next question reads, Dear Dr. Wong, I recently got into a heated argument with my cardiologist about the use of enzymes for cardiovascular and endothelial health. He took the stance that lumbokinase was better than pancreatic enzymes. He is using Baluch. I think it's from Japan. Do you have any comments or comparisons? Also, I wish I knew how to get my estradiol down and testosterone up. Wonder if lowering estradiol led to higher free testosterone. It took about 10 months. And my answer is, howdy, good to hear from you. The Handbook of Proteolytic Enzymes says that lumbokinase is stronger than pancreatin by a good bit. But that's why one should never use a single enzyme preparation. That lesson was learned and taught by Dr. Max Wolf, MD, OBGYN, and PhD ×7 at Columbia University between 1924 and 1973. Seems that lesson needs to be relearned. The action of proteolytic enzymes is like a Chinese fan with a range of action on particular substrates, i.e., the stuff that enzymes want to eat. When proteolytic enzymes are blended together, their fans overlap, but they cover a larger portion of things to eat away. And I sent him a link from Amazon.com to the book Enzyme Therapy by Ronsberger and Wolf. If you can read it in German, it's Enzyme Therapie by Ronsberger and Wolf, and it's a lot cheaper in German than the volumes that are still available in English. The publisher was Viking, and the year of publication was 1973. But getting back to my answer. So while the strength of the lysing action of a single enzyme may be superior to another, its range of substrate lysing may be limited, but when combined with other enzymes to extend the range, the effect of the most fibrinolytic enzyme, being the most fibrosis-eating enzyme, guides and acts as a general for the other enzymes, pointing out which various substrates to lyse, from just fibrin to bacteria to viral cells to emulsifying fat, etc. Mucos Pharma of Germany did most of the research on that, and those points from 1959 to 2001. Most of the studies can be found at www.enzymescience.com. In the zymessence, the lead fibrinolytic enzyme is serrapeptase, which according to the Handbook of Proteolytic Enzymes is 10 times stronger than the chymotrypsin and pancreatin. Pancreatin is made of 2 proteolytic enzymes, 1 carb-eating enzyme and 1 fat-eating enzyme. Some of the more recent studies shows that serrapeptase is 16 times stronger than chymotrypsin. The lumbokinase is on paper somewhat stronger than the serrapeptase, but my clinical experience is that it does not work as well on the human body as the serrapeptase does, and that the serrapeptase has a much wider range of substrates that it works on. Suggest to your doc that he do this bit of research. Take various patients with known arterial blockages, measure the degrees of these blockages and how many blockages can be found. Have one patient use the lumbokinase at whatever dose he deems effective for 3 to 6 months. Every other patient have him prescribe the zymessence at 1 or 2 capsules taken in between meals 3 times a day for 3 to 6 months. After 3 to 6 months, retest the areas of known blockages again for flow and compare the degrees of improvement of the lumbokinase-only group to the zymessence-only group. And if he wants to make things even more interesting, he can add a group that uses zymessence and magskorbate at 1 capsule twice a day. Then compare groups to see which one had the greatest reduction and elimination of arterial blockages. We've had all that ancillary data coming in for years. I already know what the findings will be, but I'm just a lonely naturopath. So it takes someone with a big, bad MD degree after his name to redo the work and come up with the findings so the allopathic world will believe. On your estrogen and testosterone levels, the lower the estrogen and increased testosterone show you had less conversion of testosterone into estrogen. However you did it, that is good. If you need to lower it again or just keep it low, remember that supplements such as Arsenest and meds like Arimidex will lower your estrogen and prevent the conversion of testosterone into either estrogen or dihydrotestosterone in a week or so. Be well and God bless, Dr. Wong. Now, next someone asked me what I thought of dihydrotestosterone, DHT, as a muscle-building hormone, since it's really the big thing now amongst bodybuilders. And my answer is howdy. DHT is great for building muscles. Most anabolic steroids are variations of DHT, especially Winstrol. But DHT is the hair loss and prostate swelling hormone, so there's a trade-off. You have to decide what you're willing to lose for whatever muscular gains you make. You have to remember that the losses may be permanent, such as the hair or getting prostate cancer, while muscle gains are always temporary. Those who think they can keep their muscle size forever need to look at recent pictures of Arnold, Frank Zane, and Steve Reeves in their later years. Be well and God bless, Dr. Wong. There is a trade-off. Now, mind you, most hard-charging committed athletes never think of what might happen to them. They want good results now. Years ago, I quoted a study done both at the 72 and 76 Olympics. There was one question. If there was a substance that you could take that would guarantee you win every meet you are in for the next 2 years, but will kill you immediately afterwards, would you take it? And to everyone's surprise, more than 70% of the Olympic athletes said yes, they would. They are so focused on their performance and so focused on their sport, life does not exist outside of their sport. Likewise, bodybuilders think the same way. So, take all this DHT, grow really beautiful, ripped muscles, win all of your contests and stuff, then have your prostate swell up and give you prostate cancer, or lose all of your hair on top of your head and go bald. It looks really manly to be bald. Well, you know, Bruce Willis makes a good go of it. Most other guys don't look so good being bald. So what permanent conditions are you willing to trade off for your temporary muscles? And yes, you may have your muscles for 30, 40 years. You may have your muscles for 20 years. You may have your muscles for most of your life. But as Arnold and Frank Zane and everyone else has found out, even Mr. Americas and Mr. Olympias get to the point where you really don't keep a lot of those muscles. You get to keep a good shape. You get to keep good level of fitness. You get to keep some level of strength. And you look like you once worked out and trained and were something. But for actually keeping the massive size that you build with anabolic steroids, all gone. It went the way of your shrunken testicle size. Now, I do have to say that I am not as anti-anabolic steroid as I used to be back in my 20s and 30s. Back when I was counseling high school kids against the use of anabolic steroids that their frickin' football coaches were pumping into them, I was trying to keep kids away from stuff that, again, were going to have permanent consequences for a bunch of temporary muscles. Football coaches don't give a rat's ass about their players. They'll play them until they break, throw them away, and get another player with no pangs of conscience whatsoever. Can you tell I hate football? But I do see that they have a legitimate therapeutic use for end-stage kidney patients, for burn patients, for people who've just come out of serious wasting conditions, for concentration camp victims, for those who've suffered severe muscle wasting, such as the cachexia found in cancer. Anabolic steroids are being used to treat severe wasting in HIV patients. And yes, unless you want to have a really boring set of sports records and sports performance, every record-breaking thing that's happened since 1968 has likely had a good bit of drug-related help. The 68 Olympics were likely the last mostly drug-free, not entirely drug-free, because the anabolic steroids had been in use, or testosterone and performance-boosting drugs had been in use since the 1950s. The Russians started using it, I think, at the 54 Olympics. But it wasn't until 1968 that most of the football teams started getting on the anabolic steroids. And even the baseball teams, the basketball teams, the individual weightlifters. But the only guys who weren't taking anabolic steroids were the golfers. Even the gymnasts, those pixie little, cute little girls with no boobs and little tiny voices, were taking break drugs to keep them from hitting womanhood, but they were taking other drugs to make them really big and strong. All of the East German performance, their super wonderful performance in all of the Olympics from 1968 on, were based on one version of Dianabol. They had perfected it to the point where it left the body in 2 weeks. There was no trace of it, and you couldn't lose enough muscle in 2 weeks to adversely affect performance, so they would juice their athletes right up to 2 weeks before the Olympics. Then they'd stop. Stuff would drain out of the kids' bodies. They'd never find a trace of it. And they had fantastic performance. If you remember what the East German women's swim team looked like, they could have won the Mr. Universe and Mr. America contests in the 1950s and 60s. They were so dang big and muscular. Look at the picture of Cordelia Ender winning the gold medal, I think, at the 76 Olympics in swimming. And Put her next to a picture of Steve Reeves winning the Mr. Universe in 1954, and you'll see what I mean. So again, my question is, how boring do you want sport to get? How many of you would still watch football if the linemen and the backs all looked like they did back in the 1950s and 60s? Those were little tiny puny guys compared to the guys out there now. Guys out there now are bloody monsters.